This time Odd is speaking with CJ and Lorrisa Julianus of Binary Star Pictures. Their movie The Misadventures of Mistress Maneater is a fun and outside-the-box rom-com. Odd sat down to talk with Lorrisa and CJ about their movie, their life and many other topics. Enjoy the interview.
All right, my guests are CJ and Lorrisa Julianus, the masterminds behind The Misadventures of Mistress Maneater.
Hey, everybody.
Thanks for having us.
I'm glad you're here. First off, before we get too far into it, I just want to say, I don't want to talk too much about the movie just yet. I've got stuff later on, but it is amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you. We hope all your listeners check it out and agree too.
Yeah.
And I am not what you would consider a sensitive man, but I did enjoy the movie. Rom-coms normally aren't my thing.
Well, isn't that a funny coinkydink? They're not normally my thing either.
Or mine.
All right. So let's get into it. CJ, I'm going to start with you. I know your foray into the entertainment world was sparked by your time in the Navy. Tell us the story of how and why.
Oh, okay. So anyway, back in the day when my mom and dad started a theater company at our family church, and it was to raise funds. And anytime a juvenile delinquent needed to be cast, well, I got typecast. And so that kind of like put the bug in me. And then I went into the military, and I was stationed in Coconut Grove, Miami, at the height of the drug wars. And I was discovered by a talent agent, and I started moonlighting, doing television and commercials and modeling and all that kind of stuff while I was in the Navy. With my CO's blessing, he was like, as long as it doesn't interfere with your Navy work, it was shore-based, you can do whatever you want. And so I acquired the name of Hollywood, and I was a corpsman, so it was Doc Hollywood, and I hated it.
It was a good movie, though.
Yeah, but anyway, it just kind of snowballed from there, and that was the start of things.
Lorrisa, same question for you, minus the Navy part. How and why were you drawn to the entertainment industry?
Well, I come from a pair of parents who were musicians who met in band. So music and performance was always a part of my life. My uncle was a professional actor, and that exposed me to the magic of theater, especially here in Chicago at a very young age. And I wanted to be a playwright to start. I wanted to see the stories that I made up in my head being shared with the world. So I actually have a degree that's interdisciplinary between screenwriting and theater acting. Got into the professional, agents, casting directors world here in Chicago just about 20 years ago, right after college. Continued to write, got back more into that, and now I do both. I'm a SAG-AFTRA actor. I've been on The Bold and the Beautiful, Chicago PD, lots of independent films. I do motion capture for a lot of WB's leading IPs. And then, of course, wrote Misadventures of Mistress Maneater, among many other multimedia and theatrical productions that have been premiered around the world.
Yeah, and Lorrisa and I met doing theater, actually. She hated my guts when she first met me.
I did.
I know, because I did my homework. And speaking of your theatrical work, what is Made of Stars?
Made of Stars. Oh, that's my baby. That is a play that I wrote and that was premiered in 2015. That is a beautiful spiritual allegory about 7 different souls reincarnated together throughout 2,500 years. And they come back in, totally different bodies, different genders, different conflicts, and individually throughout the 3 acts of the story, their love stories, their conflicts, they might seem very tragic, but taken together, when you realize that this story never ends, you realize it truly is this beautiful triumph of love throughout time. And at the end of the world, they're all together.
That is awesome. I've mentioned this in other interviews, and I won't go into it in a great detail here, but I am a closeted theater nerd in a way.
Ooh.
How does that work?
My mother actually got me into theater, musical theater mostly, because she exposed me to things like Cats and Fiddler on the Roof. I saw the Rocky Horror Picture Show when I was 6, but...
Oh, dear. And you're not permanently scarred? I'm a man.
I didn't say I wasn't. But no, so like I enjoy the idea of theater, but I don't like crowds and I don't like people, so I don't get to go to the theater. I'm a big
It's
proponent.
kind of like bowling. You know,
Yeah.
if you want to go bowling, you got to be surrounded by people who go to bowling alleys.
Yeah.
It's a problem.
Nothing against those bowlers out there. I'm just cracking a joke.
I got video games, so you know I can bowl at home and it doesn't hurt my wrist.
Right? I'm much better at Wii Bowl than at actual bowling. I suck at actual
Larissa
bowling.
and I were doing Wii bowling, and she beat me, and she wanted to go do real bowling.
Oh my
It
God.
didn't work out quite.
See, when you go real bowling, the way to beat CJ is you just wear something that'll keep him distracted.
Oh, she does that always.
See, there you go.
Yeah.
That does help.
So one of my favorite pastimes is when we go to Costco, I will deliberately walk 10, 15 feet behind Larissa and watch men get whiplash when she walks past. I actually watched a guy drive his cart into the back of his wife's ankle. You know how that hurts? And she shot him a look, and I caught him staring at Larissa's caboose.
And I had no idea. I was getting like walnuts from the cooking section.
It was
Like,
hilarious. Oh my God. Anyway, I have stories about that.
Okay, so CJ, talk to me about Theater on the Hill.
Oh, Theater on the Hill. So it was a failing theater company when I moved to Bolingbrook, Illinois. And I did a play there when it was still called a different. It was still a different name, and it was so bad that I swore I'd never go back. Now here's how bad it was. We were doing a production of South Pacific, and at the time, this theater company, they had this kind of like poll. They would poll the audience, you know, best actor, best actress, best villain, whatever. So when we were doing South Pacific, our orchestra won Best Villain Award. Which is just, and I was like, I'm never going to do this again. And then they were going to fold it. And I thought to myself, you know what? I need something extra to do. Let me take it over. So I was the artistic director of Theater on the Hill for 10 years. It started off being kind of like a laughingstock company. And by the time I'd finished with it, it was one of the reasons that Bolingbrook was named one of the best small towns in the country. And I was really, really proud of that. I was able to do the kind of plays that I really wanted to see done. I mean, I was not interested in doing endless remakes and redos of The Odd Couple and all the old war horses. I wanted to do stuff that was adult and different and edgy. So I directed and produced The Last Days of Judas Iscariot, Den of Thieves, Amadeus, A Flea in Her Ear, all kinds of different stuff. And I ended up directing Larissa's musical there too, Zenobia. And the thing that I'm most proud of my theater company was that it resulted in 6 marriages. Which I think, you know.
How many of them were yours?
Just this one. Just
Okay.
this one. But I think one of the best things about doing theater is the whole communal aspect of creating something beautiful together that you couldn't do on your own otherwise.
Yeah, whenever he meets singles wanting to meet people, he tells them to go do theater.
Go do theater because, you know, you go, you do it, you don't have an agenda. You get to see how people are when there's no agenda there. You see them, how they react when there's no stress. You end up partying with them and going out.
And when there is stress, you see how they are.
Exactly. So it's a really good way to meet people. And, you know, so if anybody out there is looking to find somebody and you don't want to be on stage, you can work lights, you can build sets, you can do a million different things, but it's a great way to meet people. Honestly,
I can 100% say that you are correct. Granted, it was many moons ago, but I was the stage director for a high school production of Grease. And the one thing that I can say is that for some reason, when we were in that atmosphere, all those barriers that we put up in life, you know, to keep people from getting close seemed to drop.
Yeah.
Immediately. And I can imagine how debauched it was in high school doing Grease. Oh my God.
I almost punched Danny Zuko, so he almost went out for the second act with a black eye.
Well, honestly, Danny Zuko usually deserves
Yeah,
it.
he's kind of a tool.
Yeah. Well, the kid that was playing him was definitely a tool. Okay, so that brings me to my next question. What is Zenobia, Larissa?
Oh, that was a musical based on the life of the 3rd century warrior queen, Zenobia, Queen of Palmyra, who led a rebellion against the Roman Empire. And according to some histories, of course, always defeated, it's the Roman Empire. But according to some histories, actually lived to tell about it, and was so respected by the emperor that she was allowed to marry and become this great wise teacher, and her family continued for another 2 centuries, which you don't often hear about in Roman history. Usually it's just horrible torture and death after the parade through Rome.
Yes.
The hits.
Unfortunately, I had a wonderful composer and music director that I partnered with for this huge extravaganza. Our mayor helped sponsor it. We had like over 40 people on stage, like 6 costumes, amazing costume designer. We used a lot of multimedia with film being projected simultaneously.
They had a pretty good director too.
Yeah, very good director.
Pretty good director.
That was CJ. Couldn't have done without him. And it was a very immersive experience because we had this massive stage with 3 big screens, and like I said, with the film footage as well as dancing, music, and everything going on.
Fight choreography.
Yep, a lot of fight choreography. So it's kind of I would compare it stylistically to The Prince of Egypt meets Gladiator.
I would watch it.
There's clips online. I mean, if you go online on YouTube and put in Zenobia Lorrisa Julianus, there's all kinds of clips on YouTube.
I'll have to look that up.
Yeah.
All right, CJ, tell me about The Driver.
The Driver. My God, you did your. So The Driver.
Deep cuts here.
So that was a web series that I was asked to come in and be an assistant director on, as well as an actor. I had worked with this director-producer previously on a film called Sam's Firecracker, and it actually won a bunch of short awards, and I won Best Actor from a few film fests for that one.
Don't look so confused. You did a great job.
Did I? I was confused. I was like, I did it and kind of forgot about it. But anyway, I was asked to do this, The Driver, as a web series, and that's where I met John Wesley Norton, who was my director of photography for my movie, The Misadventures of Mistress Maneater. And after working with him, I realized, our personalities meshed. I could work with this guy. And I came home after working with him, and I told Lorrisa, I said, honey, we're making your movie. And Larissa's reaction was,
We're what?
Because because making a movie costs a lot of money.
Right.
And nobody wants egg on their face.
Yeah.
I'm not the type, the arrogant or inexperienced enough to think, I'm going to make a movie and it's going to be amazing because it's me and everyone's going to love it.
But anyway.
I know it takes a lot of hard work.
It does. But John is a very accomplished director of photography. He's also a writer and a good director in his own right. And I had mentioned to him, I said, Lorrisa and we've got the script that we're interested in turning into a movie. Would you be interested in reading it? And he's like, yeah, I got a lot of things. I'll try to read it in like 10 minutes.
Everybody wants you to read their script.
Yeah, that's the way it is.
Generally, everybody's script is bad.
I have filmmaker friends, I know.
So anyway, I forwarded the script to him. And, I was anticipating that I'd hear back in a month or whatever. So he calls me up. He says, Craig, I started reading it. I couldn't stop. I will do whatever it takes. And that's kind of the story of The Driver, and that's kind of where the whole adventure started with us making our movie.
Yeah, he was our right hand during all of production and post-production, made sure that we, he was our colorist, made sure that we had sound editing folks. And
we did our fine edit together, the 3 of us.
Yes. So that was fun because when we were really, so I did the rough cut. And as we were deciding after our initial screening, hey, we need to cut this down. What do we take out? What lines do we take out? What, sometimes parts of scenes, what shots do we take out just to make it tighter, but without losing any of the necessary clues for the story? There's lots of little breadcrumbs that sometimes you need for a payoff later, and you don't want to lose those because then it comes out of nowhere and the audience feels cheated.
Right.
So, we have this 3-way discussion, and he was always the tiebreaker, which was great. At first, he was like, no, I don't want to get between a married couple. But I very quickly realized that we had so much respect for each other, CJ and I, and for him as a filmmaker, that it was very easy if I didn't like something and CJ did, for John to say yay or nay, and us to all be happy with that and go, okay, I trust you.
It was a good system.
It's good. And speaking as a writer, I know what it's like to bother your friends as well.
Yeah, you have to do it very judiciously, that's for sure.
We've read some scripts that have been genuine slogs. It's like, oh my God, I can't, you have to like get up and go outside and have a primal scream and come back to it.
I felt bad for my editor. I've published a short story through Amazon as AO, and
congratulations.
It was a couple of years ago. It's self-published. It's like the pat on the back of the writing world. But I felt bad for my editor because, like, as she's editing, I'm changing things.
Oh. There you go.
And the funny thing is the short story, it's only 13 pages. Yeah, I think it technically would work as a treatment. But as she's editing, I'm changing stuff, and she's like, "What are you doing? None of that makes sense now after I've edited. Stop it." So
no, but I think that's the real key to the best writing. So often now as a writer, I sold my first script 25 years ago. So I've been at this a while, and you can easily recognize when, all right, maybe this person has the talent and the ability, but they just haven't spent enough time refining this. Just like a painting, the more layers that are there, the richer and better the painting looks. Skin so often needs 20 layers and oils to look realistic. Like oceans, you can see that's one layer of blue, or no, in order to look like a real ocean, it needs to be layer upon layer upon layer. Yeah. So I see that with writing. It's like, oh, this piece, it very clearly was written quickly, versus you could tell that this was, time was taken, draft after draft after draft. And I did the same thing. I hired an editor for the novel that Mistress Maneater was based on. Took all his edits, did a lot of work, but recently went back and went through 5 more drafts to make it as smooth as possible, so that the reader's eye, that's always my ideal, the reader's eye just flies over it, that you never have a hiccup, and you never have to stop. You're never pulled out of the story. You are immersed in the page.
Yeah, the general consensus I got was they wanted more, and I need to get writing more.
Well, then that's a good consensus.
That's a good sign. You don't often get positive feedback from that kind of stuff. So
no, but when you let your friends read it, you have to wonder sometimes: is it they don't want to hurt your feelings, or is it really good? So
well, that's why we do have those friends where you're going to get the honest truth. Yeah. I think that's the most valuable versus the friends that
I'm that friend.
Oh, yeah. See, that's what it means. That's what means more when you have the person that is not going to blow smoke up your skirt.
Right. I've got a short story I wrote, 5-page story about my first encounter with a White Castle slider.
Oh.
And having to be on stage in tight pants right afterwards.
Yes. Ooh. Oh. Unfortunate.
To this day, I still have people asking me for copies of it because it makes them laugh so much.
But no, the self-publishing world, as you know, is totally different. What was just seen as vanity press in the past is now just as legitimate in many circles, and also there's no guarantee in the traditionally published world that you will make any money more so than self-published. I've read absolute dreck, whereas clearly this person has never had any writing experience. This person didn't read the first article about writing. This person never edited this. This person doesn't know how to use commas. This person has the wrong symbol in the place of apostrophes. And then I've read work that's like, right now I have a friend, Shane Rose, and her latest book is number 50 in all of Kindle's store, and it's rising to the tops. And I started reading it today, and I couldn't tell the difference between her work and something I'd get on the shelf at the library.
Yeah.
So really, just like movies, it really does run the gambit. Indie films are just as guilty of you don't know what you're going to get.
Yep. Well, I will say this. One of these days, I may kick the short story to a filmmaker friend of mine and see if they can turn it into a short or something like that, because I think it would work well. Reading, unfortunately, I hate to say it, seems to be going the way of the dinosaurs.
Yes.
I wake up every morning more and more terrified that we're moving closer to the Eloi.
Yeah. Yes, I would agree with that. And it was a few articles I read that really made me realize, okay, this dream of making money as a novelist probably isn't for you, Lorrisa. That idea of whether it's self-published, well, it's harder odds in self-publishing, but even the traditional world, 20% of the books make 80% of the profits.
Mm-hmm.
So the majority of the books are not going to be successful. More people are writing and want to be, or as aspiring novelists, than are reading in many cases, like you said. And we found that it's hard enough to get people to watch a 2-hour movie where you just have to sit there and look, let alone reading a book that sometimes takes a real investment of time and energy.
Yeah. Speaking of your movie, let's get into it.
Okay.
In the movie, Ava is paying her way through art school by being a dominatrix. You said that the movie was inspired by a book. So my question of where the idea from that sparked from, what book was it from?
It was a novel manuscript that I wrote,
Okay.
The Misadventures of Mistress Maneater, which I found to be since I had initially written, 8 years ago, the initial screenplay. And it was just meant to be this light, frothy.
It was a lark.
Yeah, inexpensive comedy, not a lot of thought given to it. Going back to that whole idea of scripts written quickly. Sent it for coverage, which I highly recommend for every aspiring scriptwriter, long before you bother anybody serious in the business and make a potentially bad first impression. Screenplaycoverage.com. So these are actual studio readers in LA who read through your script, summarize it, tell you everything that's working, everything that doesn't work, why they'd pass it on, or why they would just say, no, this isn't going to go anywhere. So, they point out like all the plot issues, the characterization issues, anything they might see. And of course, it's very hard to hear all that stuff from your baby at first.
Mm-hmm.
But he set it aside for a little bit, and I decided, you know what, I'm going to take all of this advice and make it into a novel. As at that time, I had this idea of a novel series might work with this concept. So what was a 2-inch pond became 20 fathoms deep with all the characters and the relationships and a lot more going on. And I highly recommend that to any writers. Take your story and put it in a slightly different writing medium and see what happens to it. So then when we were making it into a film, I went through 9 more drafts of script adapted from that novel manuscript I had, just taking the best of the best and making it the product that we have, hopefully as entertaining as it could possibly be.
My wife wanted me to ask the question.
Yes.
How did the idea for a dominatrix and a priest getting together come up?
All right.
Are you want to take it to the start, or you want me to?
Well, I am the writer.
Oh, you are.
BBC's Sherlock. That was my initial germ of the idea, because in season 2, episode 1, Sherlock encounters a dominatrix who's just as brilliant as he is, but it's this total opposites. And I wanted to take that a step further. How can we have this juxtaposition of 2 very different people that we could never imagine being together in a million years? And I have the very much the religious background that I grew up in, so I could relate to that character and the noble man who's trying to do his best in the world and is avoiding the temptation and the sin in the form of Ava, like loose glitter. And of course, he's an Episcopal priest, so I'm not making anything scandalous like, defrocking a Catholic priest or anything like that. But
No.
What were you going to say, darling?
No, Lorrisa and I, we love movies, and Lorrisa has a degree in film, and I've been a storyteller all my life with directing and producing stage plays and whatever. But how many times have you seen a movie where you're like, okay, I've seen this character before. Well, I've seen this plot before. Or you can call what's going to happen 15 minutes at a time. Well, that's going to happen. So when Lorrisa wrote the script, and I kind of like followed it through all of its iterations, and I finally got the final manuscript that we massaged together. And I really recognized that there was a lot going on in the script that kind of like played to the esoteric values that we had about, we want to see scripts with characters we've not seen before, in situations that we haven't seen before, and that takes the viewer on a journey where they think they know where it's going to go, but then it veers off and does something else. And to us, that's entertaining. And that's what we want to see in movies. For the most part, when people watch our movie, they agree with that. We have gotten criticism that, we need to stick with a genre, but that's not what we wanted to do. We didn't set out to do that. We wanted to take some established tropes. I mean, like rom-coms, they have established tropes. They have to meet at the beginning. right? Whether it's a meet cute, or in our case, it's a meet ugly.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the movie, they have to be together. But whatever is in between, anything can happen in between. And that's what we really strove to find in our movie, was the unexpected stuff that audiences would be thrilled by, because they just didn't anticipate the kind of U-turns that we took with our script.
And the thing you always are told as a writer, especially as a screenwriter, is raising the stakes. So part of the reason I don't watch most rom-coms, I love the genre of rom-com, I just don't like most of the material that's been produced for it in the last 20 years.
It's gotten very rote.
Pot boiler in many cases, or a vehicle for the star without much being put into the writing. But so often it's a pot boilers, I feel, because these characters, they're two-dimensional, boring vanilla lives, boring vanilla occupations. There's no inherent conflict. The stakes are not raised. What happens if they don't wind up together? Oh, they go back to their vanilla, boring lives. Maybe they don't have a date for their sister's wedding. Oh, boo-hoo. I have to see what happens. No. So by raising the stakes, by having so much at stake for these my two characters, if Ava doesn't get the guy, she's gonna die, and she's only got 30 days. But if he falls for her, his reputation, his life, his cover for the last 20 years is destroyed. How on earth can these two people wind up together? I want to watch. Right.
No, when I initially talked to CJ and he was selling me on it, yeah, he was like, it's a rom-com, and my brain immediately went click.
Click.
Right.
Click.
But at least
Jimmy Fallon says, ew.
At least my ears stayed on, and as he was describing it, I was like, wait a minute, click.
Yeah.
And I pitched the idea to my wife, like, okay, let's watch this movie. It's a romantic comedy. Of course, she was like, ooh, hold on. It's not your typical romantic comedy. And she was like, is it one of your movies? And I was like, no, I don't think it's one of my movies. It ventures that realm, but it's not one of mine. And so me, my wife, and my two roommates, we all sat down and we watched this romantic comedy together. We watched The Misadventures of Mistress Maneater together. And we were watching it, and normally we'll talk to each other during the movie. We'll crack jokes on the movie, or if something's said that strikes us funny, we'll spin off from that. We sat in almost perfect silence for 2 hours to watch your movie.
Wow. Thank you. That's high compliment.
And at the end of it, we were sitting there and we were like, I've never seen a movie like that before. Like, yes, it's very much a romantic comedy, but it is very much not a romantic comedy, where it takes, like you said, it takes turns and twists and stuff that you wouldn't normally expect to see in a rom-com. And if that is your guys' first outing,
it is. I
am eager to see what comes next.
We are too.
Well, I do love bringing together genres. And so many of the, I've noticed so many of the comedies, so many of the shows I like, they don't neatly fit a package of a genre. Because so often with a neat package for a genre, the plot points, the stereotypical characters, what's going to happen. Like you said, you can chat during it, you can do your laundry. There's no surprises. I loved how Sherlock, going back to that, it's a mystery, but there's comedy. It's kind of like a buddy show. In the case of The Woman, there's a little bit of romance. There's action. And we can put all that together in one package. And that's what I wanted to do as well. Make something that not just women who traditionally love romantic comedies can enjoy.
Yeah, we wanted men to enjoy it too. And so you were watching our movie in silence, taking everything in. Was it punctuated by laughter, I hope?
Yeah. Yeah, no, it wasn't like we were just mindless drones watching it. But like I said, we would normally chit chat or crack jokes or things like that, along the way. I like a lot of B horror movies, so there's a lot there to make fun of.
Oh, yeah.
And in this, we were laughing, yes, but like I said, we weren't chit-chatting, we weren't scrolling Facebook or any of that stuff. Like we were fully engaged in what was being presented, and
you have to pay attention to follow it. Too.
So I have to ask you this: what was the biggest laughs that you guys had watching? Because we're really interested in that.
any of the smart-ass comments Ava gave back to the priest got a huge laugh, because all the preconceived notions, and there's a question a little bit later that I'm going to ask you that kind of ties back to that.
Okay.
But just the fact that you would see the typical, oh, you're a dominatrix, huh? You have sex for money. And she every single time that came up, and she was just like, wham, no. No. We got a good chuckle out of that, because we saw it coming, as soon as they perk up, they're like, oh, we're like, okay, here it comes. And I that was something that I wanted to point out too. And again, it'll come up a little bit later in an actual form of a question, but I do want to say, at least right now, that I am very happy to see that sex work was put in a positive light. Yes, she doesn't have sex with her clients, but dominatrix is a form of sex work. And it was nice to see it not being handled as if it was something to be ashamed of.
It has been a very interesting journey and experience dealing with Ava and discovering through people I know who are involved in the BDSM world, trying to be as respectful as possible, trying to be as accurate as possible, though, of course, this character does not want to be in that life and is trying to get out of it. Yeah. But still being very sensitive to all of that and trying, like you said, showing it in as much of an empowering light as possible. It has been fascinating too that, I'm actually, I don't want to say puritanical, but I'm a little more conservative with
We don't know anything about that lifestyle.
That's actually my next question.
Yeah. We're vanilla people. We had advisors. No, but I'm saying, as far as movies, I won't audition for movies that have sex scenes and nudity. I personally am getting to the point where I have been for all my life, where it's just like, is this really necessary? And years ago that was puritanical. And now it's like, the Me Too movement, everyone's now behind that. So it's been very surprising to me too, and how trying to show this as sexy, smart, but empowered, but still very clean, still very PG-13. There's no F-bombs, there's no nudity, there's no sex scenes. How even with all of that, and knowing my desire to be very respectful, and especially of women in film and how we're depicted, we've gotten some interesting reactions from people. You either get the terror of, oh my God, it's all about sex, it's porn. And when you're like, no, it's not. Or you get the, I'm so angry, there was no sex, how dare you? And it's like, it's almost like you have your feet in two different worlds. As actually one of my big fans, who's watched the movie 4 times and loves it, and she is a pastor. And she said, Lorrisa, you are kind of in 2 different worlds here. And I said, well, then, yeah.
Well, in the talks leading up to the interview, CJ told me that a lot of the kink world was foreign to you both, and that you had to have an expert. So this is kind of a 2-part question here. What was the process of finding said expert? And we'll give that one first, and I'll give you the next one after.
Well, of course, since my inspiration was a PBS BBC show back, 10 years ago, The Woman in Sherlock, that was relatively tame. I, done my own research over the years just to be accurate to Ava as much as possible. But we were very fortunate in, now that we're presenting this to the world, through our crew, we had someone that our line producer knew and recommended, said, hey, this person is active in this community. She could help you with props. She might have some ideas for you. And she turned out to be an amazing, amazing resource. I also had people who were involved in the community read the script ahead of time to give their approval. They thought it was hilarious. I did not want to be disrespectful at all. So our advisor actually, there's a kind of a funny thing that happened. So, Kurt, he is the groom-to-be who gets his back set on fire with foam. Yeah. The hair mousse, actually, we learned from our advisor, which tied into our theme of fire, because fire is obviously a theme for the whole movie. And fire play is when shaved skin, so there can't be any hair on it, you apply hair mousse to it. You have to find the right type of hair mousse, and you light it on fire, and it provides a little warming sensation, but visually it looks absolutely magnificent, and that's what we used for our film. So we had our little Girl Scouts day, as we call it.
So here's what happened. So we had to figure out what moose burned the best. So we've got a collection of moose in the closet.
Yeah, if you need some hair moose for that beard there, let's send it to you.
What was the best one? Aussie? Aussie was the best.
It's like, oh, there's some fire. I'm not putting that in my hair.
Yeah.
Nothing against Aussie. I love their products, but yeah.
But we had to test it out. And then we also had to get the actors. We had to, this is what the script calls for. So we had to get together ahead of time.
So actors who've never met us, who've never been to our house.
Come here, kids. Let me burn you.
Yes, exactly.
But we had a blast. We had so much fun that day.
We're learning how to tie knots, like actual BDSM, the knots for shibari together like it was Girl Scouts. It was hilarious.
It was like craft day with weirdos.
Did you guys all get your little merit badges?
Yes, the BDSM merit badge.
But they got it done. And then the opening scene of the movie, that scene is played by Bruce Spielbauer, who was our UPM.
Unit production manager, for those who don't know.
Yeah. And
also a SAG actor in his own right.
We initially filmed it, and we didn't film it with slow motion chip, because that was done in slow motion, where instead of it being normal frame rate, it was 60 frames per second.
So when the fire lights up, it's much more
slower,
dramatic.
You can see the flames. So we had to refilm that. We called everybody back over, and the way that scene worked is when you put the moose on, it's very difficult to control it because it'll spit out and spurt out. It won't make the right shape, whatever. We had to do like 15 takes where we lit this guy on fire. And
he's such a trooper.
He's such a trooper. So I'm off. So I've got my DP here, and I'm directing the DP and how to do it and how to get the shot. And I'm right off the frame with a wet towel, because as soon as the shot's complete, I throw the towel on him to put the whole thing out. We did it like 15 times. Finally, we got the M for Mistress Maneater, the M on his back to work right. And just as I threw the towel on his back, he's like, ow. So we finally got what we needed, but he was
such a trooper.
It was a process for sure.
I've definitely learned about the things I probably won't deal with again, just from a film production side. Like, okay, that was probably more headache than it was worth.
But we did it, and it worked out just fine. We filmed that just as a segue to the title sequence with the burning M and Maneater. So that's why we did it that way.
Now, my second question, based off that one, how much of what you learned did you wish you had not?
We didn't go too deep down the kink route.
Okay.
I mean, there were some articles that I read about, and people I spoke to about the real life of a dominatrix, and I'm like, and we're going to keep this very PG-13 and not go down that route.
You know what's interesting though? So our lead actor, Mickey O'Sullivan, who did a wonderful job as Father Radavan, he was really spectacular in the role. I advised him that I wanted him to do some research on the Bosnian-Serbian War and the atrocities that happened during that civil war. And frankly, when you read up
that was much tougher research to do.
When you read up on that stuff, that is stomach churning what those people did to each other, and just the genocide that was happening out there. So he read some of it, and then at a certain point he read some stuff. He's like, okay, I'm done, I get it, I don't need to read it anymore.
No, I get that. We recently did an episode on Rodney King, and we've got one coming up on Tulsa and Black Wall Street. And I'm going to tell you what I knew, but reading about it is just like when you start getting into the atrocities that have happened throughout history, you realize just how much it's glossed over when history class comes around.
Yes. And I recently watched the Great Courses series, History of Eastern Europe, which I highly recommend. Very, very well done. But I think the only way I was able to get through of it, since so much of it was modern history and everything from, Stalin and what he did to modern conflicts in the last 30 years. It's when it's told in a more clinical setting without anything that would overly stimulate your emotions, like anything too graphic. It's much easier, I think, for those of us sensitive people to understand and process and absorb without it too adversely affecting our psyches.
It's really. I recently had a run-in with somebody online where they were defending Hitler, and
that's a hard sell.
Right, defending Hitler on a Jewish woman's social media page, which I found to be completely inappropriate. But I called him out, made an enemy, whatever. I don't care. Nazis deserve to be punched in the face, whatever. But then I had to start doing some research into what actual tactics were of the SS and all that kind of stuff. And it was just gut-wrenching when you read the real life accounts of it. There was a documentary on, I believe it was on Netflix, about the Holocaust and all that kind of stuff. And oh my God, once you dig into it and you're not looking at the kind of like the Cliff Notes version of the homogenized narrative, you could literally lose sleep for a week.
I think it's worse too for us creative types, because I don't know about you guys, but everything I read creates a picture in my head, whether I want it to or not.
Or when I heard it, when I hear it said, and especially because filmmakers can be very evocative, and documentarians, I think that's the word, very evocative with their music and their visuals and whatever. And I've noticed the older I get, the more sensitive I'm getting, maybe hopefully the more empathic to others and their suffering. And I have to be very guarded and very careful about, okay, how much do I want the filth of the world to have access to my brain? Yeah. I want to know what happened so that historically, we need to know these things. This is necessary. But you said, having those bumpers of knowing how you ingest that information can be the difference between sleeping and not.
Yeah, like right now, I'm in a really dark place thinking about it, and I'm thinking to myself, we live in a world where lies are accepted as truth, and misdirection is accepted as truth, and people can say whatever they want, and people are very, very open to suggestion because they're not educated enough and they don't have enough curiosity to find out what's going on. And I almost feel like the opposite end of the spectrum has to occur, and this stuff literally needs to be shown to these people so they really understand it, because they're so willing to accept lies and manipulations as truth. So
that's true. That is true. It's a fine line.
It really is.
You can't sterilize everything.
But if you showed some of the things that really went on, I mean, it would be rated XXX just because of how graphic the gore and violence would have to be. And as a filmmaker, I mean, I'm not sure how that would play out. I mean, there's movies out there like Cannibal Holocaust and The Green Inferno that show real human suffering and real ugliness.
And this is why I can't watch
the Holocaust and what the Nazis did and what happened in the Bosnian War is even far worse than even that.
And I find that's why of course I was never raised with horror movies, so I think it can be part of your culture growing up too, how you feel about it. But for me, there's so much suffering that happens in the world and so many atrocities, I can't enjoy it as entertainment.
No, you can't.
Pay to see it.
But that's why we're so happy with our movie, because it offers hope. Anyway, I'm done. Go ahead.
Actually, there is something interesting that I don't think a lot of people end up clocking when it comes to horror movies. Everyone just looks at it as a slasher or gore flick or blood splatter flick or anything, along those lines. But realistically, horror films are often a very political and social commentary about the time period that they're taking place in.
Oh, definitely. And that's why I do love movies like Get Out. Even to me, it's not a traditional horror movie. It's not extremely graphic, but of course, there's so much wonderful social commentary going on.
Well, even movies like Texas Chainsaw Massacre and the Night of the Living Dead was a look at racism. Day of the Dead, the original one, George Romero, it was a look at consumerism and how
that was Dawn of the Dead.
Dawn of the Dead. Sorry. Yeah. Was a look at consumerism. Like, there's a lot of subtext in a lot of different horror movies. Even the Saw franchise and Hostel is a look at just how far people are willing to go sometimes.
We've really veered off in a subject here, but
sorry.
No, it's fine. It's fine. I actually like it. I mean, this is a conversation I could have ongoing.
Yeah, CJ loves horror, and me not so much.
Well, I love horror movies, but there's so few good ones.
Yeah.
The movie Pan's Labyrinth.
Yes.
There's a scene.
There's a few shots that I cannot get out of my mind, even though I saw it 16 years ago.
Yeah, there's that. Well, not that. No. It's when the guy put his hand up and he got his hand sliced open.
Oh, yeah.
Between his fingers. And that's like a really cringe-inducing moment. I mean, you literally feel that pain the way it was filmed. But the reality of what, again, that's the whole fascism, Nazism, Franco.
I thought it was good, to show to a modern audience what happened in the Spanish Civil War.
Right, but
I also feel too that a lot of times the gore and the vulgarity of violence that is there is often used to punctuate the social commentary that's coming with it. Mm-hmm. It's okay, you're not getting the idea, here's the shock factor to see if you'll get it. Right. Well, I have ideas about that kind of thing and how to show it, but I'm not like, I don't want to make a movie that's like The Human Centipede. I don't want to do anything that's gratuitous. I mean, if I ever made a movie like that, I would want it to feel like Schindler's List. Yeah. Where it was just very matter of fact about the evil of what was the name of Aman Gof, the commandant, how black and ugly his soul was, and how life mattered not to him as it related to Jews and minorities and things like that. But even Schindler's List, the violence that was shown in that movie pales in comparison to the reality of what they were really doing. Correct.
And I thought Spielberg did a masterful job of showing violence and death and man's inhumanity to man with that, with the way that was all portrayed. I almost feel like because of the way the world is going, the reality of what they really did almost really does have to be shown. I don't know if I'm the filmmaker to do it.
Right. Well, let's get back into a happier realm, though, because I don't want to be a Debbie Downer with you guys. Yeah. There's a painting that's a plot point in the movie. And I have it here in my notes that Lorrisa painted it and that there's a very good story behind it.
Oh, I don't know about a very good story. We just wanted to save money. And
that's a good story. I like that
story. But there's more. There's more to it than that. Go ahead, you start it.
Well, I actually picked up painting. I've always been into art, but I picked up painting professionally during the recession. There wasn't a lot of work for me in the business, and ended up getting my first gallery within 3 months. Now I paint live at events, and it's a great side income for me. A lot of times my main income, depending on the year. But for this piece, this was Judith and Holofernes. So this was in the original novel manuscript, and it's supposed to be a Baroque painting that looks like a Caravaggio. So he's called Maurici in the movie, because I never wanted to claim that anything that I produced could be close to an actual Caravaggio, who was
but Maurici was his middle name, right?
Yeah. So he painted in the early 1600s, considered the father of the Baroque. You often painted actually very violent scenes, but very dramatic. So you'll always know, for your listeners, you'll always know a Baroque Caravaggio piece because generally the background is black or very dark, and there's a stark, dramatic light on the human figures in the foreground. And your eye goes straight to it. You can't miss it. There's nothing soft or boring about his work. So with Judith and Holofernes, it's a story from the Apocrypha in the Bible about this town in Israel being under siege by the Assyrians, I believe it was. Holofernes was the general leading against them. They had no chance of survival. They were all whining and moaning and very, very sad. And Judith, who was this wealthy widow, says, "Hey, leave it to me. I'm going to go take care of this." Marches out of the city and goes to the camp with her maid and, acts like she's this lovely, charming, and, basically Holofernes gets drunk with her. "Oh, hot chick, let's bring her back to my tent." And she proceeds to get him drunk and beheads him, and heads back to the city. The entire army is terrified, flees. They're basically defeated without even anyone dying except for the general. And she is hailed as a hero. So that became the image of overcoming toxic masculinity only in Ava Moriarty, that's our lead character in our movies, style. and she is the subject of this particular painting, which I based on Caravaggio's David with the Head of Goliath. So some people thought it might be like Salome and John the Baptist. It's like, no. Let's not have an evil female character. This is a heroic female character from apocryphal history.
Yeah. So when Lorrisa was painting that, we got estimates from fine artists that we know of $5,000 to $10,000 to paint that. And I was like, well, honey, it looks like you're painting that.
So yeah, so it took about 4 months, and I did a time lapse. So every hour I took another
There's
photo.
a video available of it on our Facebook page. But interestingly enough, when Lorrisa was painting it, I kind of left her alone to her own devices. I wasn't checking up on it or anything like that. But as soon as I saw where it was going, I knew immediately that it was a metaphor for feminism overcoming toxic masculinity. And it's a metaphor that serves the movie very, very well. And I'm glad that it turned out as well as it did. And it's just an amazing piece.
Now, the movie isn't your typical rom-com. We've already established that. How does one go about putting forth something that follows a blueprint but stands alone outside of it and what is expected from it? Like, how do you basically, how'd you sell this movie?
Well, we only had to sell it to each other, actually, because we're completely, we did not have any outside investors or anything like that. Lorrisa and I, like I said earlier, we always want to see movies that are fresh and new and unexpected. And the rom-com, so for beginning filmmakers, there's really only a couple of genres that really work well. The rom-com genre is one.
But you rarely see that in the indie world.
And the other one, obviously, is horror movies. Horror movies, I mean,
that generally sells more, especially.
They're a dime a dozen, yeah.
Yeah, and they're easy to make, and if you have buckets of blood and whatever, you can probably pull something off. But we don't want to see that. I remember distinctly being on a film set, and one of the actors found out that I was a director. And he came up to me and he's like, I got the script. I really want you to read it. And I said, oh, what's it about? And it's like, well, a woman is kidnapped and she's tortured, but she escapes. And I said to the guy, I said, you know what? I don't think the world needs any more of those movies.
I can't tell you how many auditions, Chris, that I had of, you need to do screaming and you're in pain and you're being tortured and you're this and you're raped and you're blah, blah, blah. And it's just like, no. Fortunately, I think that in the recent years that seems to have died down. Either that or I'm just getting old, one or the other.
Yeah, but I told the guy, I said, like, I'm so glad you made your script, but the world doesn't need any more of these kind of movies. Literally, I mean, there's already too much of this garbage out there, and maybe I roughed them up a little bit, but it's the truth. Mm-hmm. So when Lorrisa wrote such an incredibly good script. And when she handed it to me, as a director, I see things. And when I was directing plays, I would read 15, 20 scripts before I would select one to produce. Because you're going to be invested with people and time doing these things. And it's got to be good. It's got to be a shiny object. And when I read Lorrisa's script, it was that way for me. It was a shiny object, and I could see in my head how these scenes were going to play. And as a director, and you know this, as a director, when you can see a script, the written word jumps into your brain and you can visualize it, then you know you've got something. And that's when I really realized that this was something I had to do. And then the other part of the equation was, Lorrisa is fairly well known in the entertainment business in Chicago, but there's a glass ceiling. And oftentimes as an actor, you're often beholden to the whims of others. Your worth is very subjective to casting directors and producers and whatever. And
you're always limited to what's available.
Exactly.
And there's oftentimes not that much that you'd be interested in.
Right. So you could wait forever to find the right role or the right part or whatever. And then it becomes, does anybody else see you doing it? And it's a very difficult process. So I wanted to help Lorrisa with achieving her dreams. Lorrisa and I, we've been married 17 years. She's my best friend. We love each other desperately, deeply. And seeing all of the nonsense that she's dealt with over the years, I wanted to do everything I could as a couple to empower her and not only make her dreams come true and our dreams come true, but to show the world all of the talents that she's got. She's an amazing actor. She wrote the script. She edited the movie. She was the music supervisor. She painted the painting. She wrote the original song in the film.
And the lyrics.
And the lyrics.
You can't
well,
take,
you wrote the
yeah,
lyrics,
can't take
but
the
we had a
credit because we
composer.
had an amazing composer in
Yeah.
Lisa Liu.
But, you know, and that's kind of how it all came about for me.
And I've learned so much. I can't even tell you, Chris. I really feel strongly that every actor at some point needs to edit their own work. Every actor needs to produce at some point. Every writer needs to edit their own work. The screenwriter, I should say, like edit it with the actual visuals, because of how much it refines your craft and your vision.
Yeah, we just honestly, we wanted to make our own luck. I've been very successful in my life. I've done a lot of really interesting things, and I consider myself to be a pretty successful person. And a lot of people over the years have said, you know, that CJ, he's lucky. He's just lucky. No, that's not true. You make your own luck. I mean, there's going to be a lot of.
We've gotten a lot of no's.
We've gotten a lot of no's. We've had a lot of brick walls.
We've had.
But, you know, at a certain point, if you're always working to get to the yes, you're going to start making your own luck somewhere along the way.
Yeah.
And for me, what's always been my North Star is, you know, since I was a kid, is I want to write stories that are smart and funny and sexy and exciting. But hopefully at the end of that roller coaster ride, make everyone feel a little bit better and more hopeful about the world.
Or start a conversation.
Yeah, and you don't need something saccharine in order to bring something worthwhile and bright to the world.
Well, speaking of starting that conversation, in every single rom-com, it's usually a down on her luck woman who is saved by the typical archetype of a male. This movie breaks that mold. Did you find it difficult to balance a typical love story and a not so typical age of enlightenment?
Well, the next one's a bit of a struggle because I want to take on, you know, more racially diverse characters and whatnot. And it can be a little, you know, that's a tightrope now. Like, how do we empower the folks who haven't had the same privileges, whether it's LGBT community or
gays.
Yeah, that's what I said, LGBT community or racial minorities. But with this one, you know, we didn't have as many of those issues. As far as the love story goes, I structured this very similar to a modern romance. So a lot of people don't understand, you know, when they think of a romance novel nowadays, oh yeah, that's like mommy porn. It's like, no. That's not what this genre is anymore. There is some of that, you know, albeit, but it is the top-selling genre in the world, runs the gamut from something your great-grandma would want to read to something, you know, very BDSM and whatever. But there are so many strong principles in the story structure that is required for a modern romance. And that is what I reflected here, is that you have two characters that both have to be very strong in their own rights, male and female. And they both have an outer goal, an exterior goal. You know, him, it's saving the church. With her, it's how do I get this money to repay my Russian mobster ex-boyfriend before he kills me? So there's your exterior goal. And, you know, of course, she thinks I need to get the money by getting naughty pictures with this priest. But then you also have the interior goal, the goals that the characters don't realize they have. And that usually has to do with growth, inner growth. Self-actualization, self-esteem, self-image. With him, you know, these messages of forgiveness, of being willing to tear down those walls that you've built up. In the case of both of these very strong characters, but both of them have walls, and through the compassion and understanding of each other are able to reach each other. So even though we have so much imagery and all of this metaphor of Ava confronting and taking down toxic masculinity in 4 different forms, whether it's social intimidation, sexual intimidation, financial intimidation, we also have our leading man, Radovan, who represents this enlightened male who has both, you know, who embraces his gentler side while being this strong badass who's an MMA fighter. And, you know, through that, Ava is able to evolve and embrace both of her masculine and her feminine and become this truly for herself enlightened, restored human being.
Yeah. So, you know, the old saying is write what you know. Obviously, we don't know anything about BDSM, but our relationship, Lorrisa and I's relationship, we're both two fairly powerful people. And my whole thing in being married to Lorrisa is to support her and to be, in the face of a gale, to be the person behind her, holding her up in the gale and getting her through. And it's the same thing with me. So she took a lot of kind of like the flavor of what we are and imparted that into the script. And there's a lot of Lorrisa and I in that script.
Yeah, so it's not about, for me, it's like, that one true love isn't about finding that person who's going to fix all your problems. It's going to be that person who inspires you to be stronger better, and to love yourself because of how they love you.
Exactly.
And so whether or not that relationship works, you have become a better, stronger, more complete, more whole, more loving person.
I got 2 more questions about the movie, and then we move back into your personal life.
Oh boy.
This next one actually is kind of more about your personal life. Every rom-com has that meet cute moment. I have to ask, being that we're doing this on Valentine's Day, what was your guys' meet cute moment in your relationship?
We had a meet ugly.
Well,
go ahead, honey.
Well, it was at auditions for Joseph the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. And you were pointed out to me as kind of one of the head honchos in the theater company. And as you walked into the Park District building, and I looked and I said, oh, I saw his long, lean, he could be a runway model type. I was like, oh, he looks like a choreographer. And the person who was next to me said, oh, no, he's not gay. I was like, that's not what I meant, but okay.
Good to know.
So when I met him, I was kind of indifferent, like, there's a middle-aged guy, whatever. I was very indifferent and ended up being cast. And then the very first meeting of the entire cast, it was a very large cast, and I was one of the narrators. And he didn't make a great first impression on me.
Go ahead, tell him.
Well, he had his leather jacket and his leather beret turned backwards and his club glasses on. I mean, who wears freaking club glasses indoors? Yeah. And I had this issue with him because it's like his voice was smiling, but his face wasn't. I just thought, okay, this is just a guy who thinks that he's cock of the walk and full of himself and, bossy and going to be mansplaining and very, very alpha. So I took this immediate dislike, not realizing that he was purposely playing bad cop because of past drama that the theater company had had. So he was letting the director be good cop and he was bad cop. But I bought it hook, line, and sinker and proceeded to just give him dirty looks and avoid him at all costs.
She looked at me like she was smelling a skunk.
Yeah.
Actually, she gave me what we call now the wet cat look. You want to do that? I think
that's also referred to as RBF.
Yes.
Yes.
That is.
Or in the movie, resting dick face.
Yeah.
Yeah. But there was a sea of faces.
Conjures a very terrible image.
But I saw this sea of faces, and Lorrisa was like 5 rows back at 10 o'clock, and I was looking at her, looking at me. I was like, oh boy, we got a live one there. And so for the first couple weeks, if I came to the theater while they were rehearsing, she would walk to the opposite side of the theater to be as far away from me as possible. Is that true?
Yes.
That is true. And then finally, she was producing her own play from her own script.
At the same time.
And she was having trouble with auditions, and she asked the guy I was working with for our media contacts because she wanted to do a special audition for this thing. And his response, well, if you want to do that, you got to talk to Craig. And Larissa's response was,
I don't want to talk to Craig.
And his response was, but you got to talk to Craig. And her response was,
but I don't want to talk to Craig.
and then it was just like, I was there and she had to talk to me. She turned around and she was like, hi. And,
so then I eventually realized maybe he's not so bad.
And within a couple months we were dating, and probably about 3 or 4 months after that, I knew I was going to spend my life with her.
Well, it gives me hope in knowing that my marriage is probably going to be one that stands the test of time, because my wife could not stand me for the first 6 months that she knew me.
Oh, we got to hear this story.
Okay, so without going into a lot of backstory, I met my wife through a person I am no longer friends with. And that's because they were dating. But Anyways, I met my wife. I was married at the time. She was dating somebody I knew. And I am the type of person that if I like you, I'm going to be very nice to you. And if I don't like you, I'm going to be very nice to you. And if I like you, I'm going to make fun of you. It's just me.
You're a dick.
Yeah, big time. Just flat out. If I don't like you, I'm going to be super cordial and professional. And if I do like you, I'm going to pick on you endlessly. So,
Chris,
So
you must not like us then.
So you're negging her big time to start.
technically, no, because this is a professional setting and those rules don't apply.
Okay.
Okay.
But anyways, so I was introduced to her, and my wife is 5'0". You know, I stand a good head and shoulder. I'm 6'6" on a good day, you know. And so I was teasing her about being short because she was dating my friend, so I had to instantly, you know, like her and you know, not treat her like crap in the other sense. It's a really weird place in my head. Just
Okay, we'll go with it.
So anyways, so I picked on her for being short, and she got offended by it because she'd been picked on her whole life for being short.
Yeah.
So literally for the first 6 months she knew me, she could not stand me. Like anytime I came around, she did that same thing where you went to the other side of the theater. She would just disappear completely. I'd walk in, I'd see her, and then she'd be gone until just before I left.
There you go.
I know.
And so, you know, after some time had passed and I had gotten separated from my then wife, and she had her issues with the person she was dating. We started talking, and you know, one thing led to another, and we tried dating, and then dating seemed to work, and I gave her a concussion, and
that's a sign of love.
There's romance for you.
we both had terrible relationships, so we waited a little while before we jumped into bed with each other.
Smart.
That's smart.
And then when she finally gave me the green light, I was so excited. I've got cement walls all the way around, and I got a little too exuberant, and I threw her into the wall.
Oh no!
Didn't even get a chance to really get into anything. So the rest of that night, I got to sit up with her and try to keep her head from hurting and watch her favorite cartoon, Scooby-Doo, so she felt better.
Oh, well, I need to put that in a rom-com. I totally need to put that in a rom-com.
By all means, if man gives woman concussion, then they fall in love. So yes, but you are right. I am a dick. But I got a heart of gold, so it kind of offsets.
Yeah, so you're not really dead inside. It's just an act.
Yeah, it's very much an act. It's one that I've mastered over the years. See, I grew up a child in an abusive home, and I know how to do whatever I need to do to get by.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, I got a question for you guys. How did you feel about being direct-to-home release via Tubi and other streaming platforms?
There's no other choice.
Yeah, there's the movie industry has changed exponentially in the past several years. It used to be very much about get a distributor. If you can get a distributor, that's the holy grail, because
Or it used to be.
It used to be. So, you know, you get a distributor, you're going to get a theatrical release. They're going to pay you a fee to own the movie, blah, blah, blah. That does not exist anymore. It's completely gone. COVID accelerated the fact that people do not go to movie theaters. We have an 85-inch screen downstairs. We literally have a cinema in our home. We don't need to go to the movie theater. The last couple times I went to the movie theater, I almost got in fistfights, you know, because people are just rude and stupid. So now getting a distributor is literally the easiest thing in the entire world, because for distributors now it's a numbers game. The more films they can represent in their stable, the more odds they have of making money. So we had distributors. We interviewed, what, 7? Mm-hmm. 7 distributors. We had one distributor. He says to us, "Oh, you guys made a nice little horror movie." Lorrisa and I looked at each other like, this guy, they don't even watch your movie anymore because they don't care. It's a numbers game. He just
judged it off the poster, which told me, oh, I need to have not a serif font and no black background. So it's amazing how you've learned, you have to fit the mold in some ways just to manage the expectations of your audience.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So Lorrisa, if she wasn't a screenwriter, she could be a CIA agent because she did all this research into film companies, and we interviewed filmmakers that had signed with various companies. We found Better Business Bureau information that was very detrimental, that ruled people out.
Yeah, our eventual distributor, Indie Rights, very, very no-nonsense CEO, Linda Nelson. And she said, hey, before you sign with me, talk to my filmmakers and all those other distributors that have made you offers, talk to their filmmakers. So I did that. If I would I would drill these distributors with their great sales pitches, because they were just looking for someone, oh my God, it's a distributor. Yes, please, I'll sign on the dotted line. Yay. That's what they're preying on in many cases. And I was the one going, what are your comps? What are your comparable films like ours? How quickly did they make their money back? So on and so forth.
And that's when they got tripped up, because they had a great sales pitch, but when it came to backing up what they said, it wasn't so good. And we talked to a lot of filmmakers who said, I've never seen a paycheck from them.
Yeah, you guys asked all the right questions for yourselves and all the wrong ones for them.
Exactly. Yeah. And, so it just goes back to the whole thing with contracts and things like that. Before you sign a contract, you want to ask the questions. You don't want to be asking questions after you sign the contract. And there's an old saying that I go by all the time when it comes to contracts. Education is when you read the fine print of a contract. Experience is when you don't.
Why don't you explain that for the listeners?
Experience is when you don't read the fine print, because then you're going to be dealing with all of the ramifications of not reading the contract. So
wait a minute, you're saying that if you're experienced, you don't read the fine print?
You get experience.
Oh, when you don't read. Okay, sorry.
I was confused too.
Yeah, okay.
Anyway, when you don't read, experience comes when you don't read the fine print. Knowledge comes from reading it. Experience comes from not reading it. Okay, sorry. I'll never do it again.
It's really easy to confuse me. I mean, actually, there's a group that I'm a part of on Facebook. If you guys want, I'll invite you into it. It is about bad distributors.
Oh,
I think I'm part of that one.
Okay, and ones to stay away from. A friend of mine set it up and brought me into it because he knows I talk to filmmakers quite often. So.
Yeah,
I'm part of that, and I actually have had some input on some of the discussions there.
Okay. Yeah, and what I found too is just because they have a beautiful, flashy website and they have a movie starring an A-lister from you never heard of the movie from 20 years ago, doesn't mean they're a good distributor. That means they put money into their website and their image, and probably not back to their filmmakers.
Well,
Same goes for anyone really in the entertainment industry, whether it's a distributor or, a sales pitch or a publicist or anything like that. There's a lot of shiny things that they'll dangle in front of you to try and distract you. It's a lot like magicians.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely true. So the other thing that we discovered about indie films is that there's a wide disparity in the quality of indie films.
Just like self-published novels.
Self-published books. You could have a wonderfully well-written, well-conceived self-published novel, and on the same token, right next to it on the website could be literally the worst piece of junk you've ever read in your entire life. It's the same thing with indie films. We had a distributor that was talking. Actually, it was the one who said we had a nice horror movie. He's representing the movie. We know the filmmaker. And we know people who are in it. And they made this movie on an iPhone with no script, no director, and no sound person. And
no makeup,
no
it's wardrobe.
And there are 30-second passages of actors looking pensively out a window while playing with their navel. And it's and I don't want to say what it is, but I think we've all seen these kind of things that are passed off as auteur work. Nobody wants to see that garbage. Our movie would have been right next to that movie, and we would have immediately been guilty by association.
Yeah.
We don't want that. So it's very difficult trying to separate when you're lumped in with the DREC when you're trying to do your very best to give quality content to the public.
But it's all you have, of course, all you have control over is your own work. So that's what we continue to refine as much as possible.
You guys mentioned COVID, and I did have a question in here about it. COVID put every one of us, used to being out and about into a position of being indoors around their loved ones for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. How did you two survive being in close quarters for so long?
Oh, I loved it.
It's great.
I mean, within reason, but
we love
together,
we love each other to death.
That's just what we do.
And we live in a 6,000 square foot house, so there is escape here.
There you go.
On a lake.
And we also live on a lake on 3/4.
I've seen the fishing pictures.
Yeah. So there's just a lot to do, and we weren't, during COVID, we obviously couldn't be making movies. We couldn't be around a lot of people, but we were outside a lot. We were in my boat. We were on my lake. People that we trusted that weren't around other people, we would allow them to be part of what we were doing.
If anything, I learned how to be I learned that, yes, I am indeed an introvert, and that's okay.
Lorrisa said, I've been preparing my whole life for this. I love this.
Yeah, as outgoing as I seem, I am very much an introvert. I always say that I'm an introvert cleverly masquerading as an extrovert.
Yes, that would be what I do.
Introverts oftentimes, when they're comfortable with people, then they allow that extrovert to come out.
Mm-hmm.
But it takes a certain level of comfort. Like Lorrisa and I, we're very leery about people who try to be our friends right away, our best friend right away. That
the love bombing, of course, boundaries
makes our spidey sense go off. But when you have a relationship that grows and thrives over time, that's a real tell.
Well, I find that relationships, whether romantic, friends, colleagues, whatever it is, I think the best relationships that stand the test of time are like hardwood trees. They grow slowly, like oak trees. And those are the most durable ones versus the ones that shoot up in a year and quickly fall.
See, it's funny too, because being in this position that I'm in, where I have to interview people, I have to generate that instant rapport. But I end up meeting people that I'm like super into, and I really do like, and I have to remind myself, you're like, okay, you can't show them you're crazy just yet. You can give it to them a little at a time here and there.
I got a theory on that. Your best friends are the same level of crazy. Not more crazy, not less crazy, same level of crazy.
I make everyone rise to my level of crazy.
All right, I get that. But no, I did a lot of, I say during COVID, I did a lot of self-work, and which I think is integral to every artist. I think that refining your actual craft, what is equally important is to work on your spiritual development, your personal development, philosophy, your understanding of yourself and the world, so that you have something meaningful and worthwhile to bring to the world, that it's not just shallow or rehashed genres that you've already seen and enjoyed. I think that's the real sign of being a mature adult artist and creator.
Yeah, I would have to agree. I have another question here about how you guys balance work life and personal life without stepping on each other's toes, but 6,000 square feet, your own lake and your own boat answers that question for you.
You know what, though? We have had those discussions insofar as we can be very intense. I am the type that on Christmas Day, I was editing music with our composer for 12 hours straight during COVID, and I loved it. I am the type that can just run myself into the ground working hard. And, there are days when CJ here is on the phone constantly with people in the business. And so recently I was like, okay, can we make like agreement, like 7:00? We get,
it's Craig and Lorrisa time.
It's Craig and Lorrisa. So, especially in the arts, so often we're working weekends or we have odd hours. We don't have that in those 9 to 6 sort of hours. And I think everybody felt that with COVID, where there's no separation when you're working from home so often from work and personal life. So it's an ongoing struggle, because not a struggle, but it's an ongoing journey, I would say, since every day is different, especially in the arts, always working with different clients, doing different skills, doing different things. And that time really taught me the importance of boundaries with myself, with my time, and how I need that recovery time. I need the self-care. For me, it's working with my hands and doing something artistic that rests my brain from the active work of writing, for example.
And then there's also that we just after 17 years together, we have a shorthand for understanding each other.
There's not a lot of conflict.
Yeah. So like yesterday, Lorrisa was in kind of a funky mood, and I realized that. I was just like, okay, just, you know what? So in this office, you can see she's got pocket doors here in her office. She just closes the pocket doors. I let her cool down. And it's the same thing with me. If I'm having a particularly, crabby day, or I got up on the wrong side of the bed, I'll go in my office and I'll close the door and I'll say, honey, it's not you. I just need to be left alone for a while, because you have to be self-aware enough to know that you might not be great company for a little while.
Yeah.
And when you're married like we are, as long as we are, we don't really fight, because what's the point? I mean, you can fight and win the battle, but what if you lose the war and you alienate your loved one and it costs you a relationship, or you have months at a time where you don't like each other? We don't want that.
Well, we're very fortunate too, since we're best friends, and we started off working together in an artistic setting, and
it's just who we are.
We've continued to do that ever since. And so, to me, when I have had a gig, say doing some sort of live performing or art or whatever it is, and CJ is able to work with me, to me, it's not work then.
It's fun. It's playtime.
Because we get to be together.
Yeah.
And so it's more of a default for us. So many couples struggle to work together. And for us, it's just, CJ, I trust more than anybody else, to be honest, but to have that discerning eye to know, okay, I really like this, or I'm not so sure about that choice, whether it's design, whether it's an editing choice, whether it's writing, painting, I completely trust his eye and his discernment.
And vice versa.
Yeah, I understand completely. I can sometimes spend 8 or 12 hours doing graphic design or video editing or audio editing and whatnot, and my wife will come down and she's like, I miss you, and like, I'm working. What do you need? What do you need? But then I have to try to, I'm not a very affectionate. I'm not like, I'd almost say I'm borderline autistic in ways, because I'm not about physical touch that much. I'm not about social interaction that much. I am very much a self-contained hermit forced to live in this social society. And so like, I'll get into stuff, and I try to find ways to get her involved. In fact, the episode on Rodney King, she produced. Like, she did all of the research on, she produced. I was only tasked with reading it and putting it forth and giving my opinion on it, and then she was on the show with me. And I told her, and I'm still going to say this, I'm very proud of the work that she put in on it, because it showed me that when she has something that she's really interested in concerning the show, she cares as much as I do about quality.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's vital.
That's important.
And that's why we have such trust between us, because we're both into details to different degrees. I tend to
yin and yang.
Yeah, but we know how to balance each other out. Like, I know my own shortcomings, that I can a lot of times be indecisive. Like, oh, should we do this one? Should we do this one? Should it go this way? I'm not sure. CJ, and he'll be like that. I'm like, okay, let's do that. So that it's a huge help to me, like with editing. And we also, we have, I want to say boundaries in this respect, because that sounds almost aggressive. But for example, CJ doesn't like editing, where he prefers to talk to people. I find it stressful to talk to strangers on the phone, and maybe it's a sign of my generation. But put me in front of a computer, close the doors, focused on my work, whatever minute things I'm doing. You're probably very similar with the editing and the graphic design, and I am happy as a clam.
And I just bring her food and drinks, and
but it got to the point sometimes with the editing where I'd be like, okay, do I use this take of this line from this actor or this one? And he'd come in and he'd be like, they all look the same. We're like, no. There's a very slight difference in the inflection on this conjunction. And then, but sometimes I realize, yeah, he's right, Lorrisa, just pick one.
I have her look over most of my graphic designs, like anything that I'm putting up on my merch store or anything like that. I have her look over and give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down on, because there's a lot of stuff that I think works and I think is funny. And she's just like, yeah, you're the only one, honey.
There has been some of that with me. Like, there's certain jokes, all right. I'll be like, did you get this? He's like, no, that's a Lorrisa joke. I'm like, okay.
As long as we're talking about relationships and what it takes to be together, I read a really great article just today, and this goes into something that Lorrisa and I have always talked about, the love languages.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
And there's 5 distinct ones. And so I was reading this article about successful couples that stay together for the long term, that make it. And one of the things that really stood out to me, and Lorrisa and I actually ran into this several years ago, was love languages. Because a lot of times what people do with love languages is they think their partner has the same love languages as they do.
So they're giving the way that they receive love and wondering, why am I not getting this back? And the partner's feeling like, why am I not receiving the love I need from you? Because it's like two different
So languages. You have to really look and understand your partner to understand what it is that they need and give that freely, rather than giving what you need to your partner, because it may be polar opposites of what they actually need. So I'm a Scorpio. I'm very physical. I need physical touch, and I need time spending. And Lorrisa needs words of affirmation.
Well, time spending is very important.
Spending, physical touch to a lesser extent.
Acts of service is big, very Virgo.
But for me, the physical touch, which is a euphemism, wink, wink.
This is PG. I don't know what you're talking about.
But we came to a point where neither one of us was getting what we needed, and we talked it out, and we both realized, okay, we love each other desperately, and we lost track of that. And Lorrisa immediately that's a testament to Lorrisa. She's so brilliant that she can take the information and process it and immediately act on it. I'm a guy, so being an idiot is woven through my DNA. It takes me a little longer. Men are like dogs. We learn by repetition. So I
don't always agree, but continue.
But I was able to take her input and incorporate it into the way I run my life. And now that's just so natural for us, the way we live, that, I mean, literally, there was another thing I read where successful couples, they'll make between 5 and 10 plays for attention on an hourly basis when they're together. And a play for attention could be as simple as, hey, I'm heating up the water, would you like a cup of tea? Or coming in while they're working and just give them a quick shoulder rub. Or, just or hey, I read this article, let me read this to you.
It just means I'm thinking of you.
Those types of things, so like when your wife came down and said, I miss you, that is literally a play for attention in a love language.
Yeah. Well, we're an odd couple in a way. She's a Libra. I'm a Leo, but I'm a Leo that doesn't like praise. It makes me uncomfortable.
That's still a good match though. Fire and air.
Oh yeah. And I'm also like a really good sponge. I need just the tiniest drop of affection and it will carry me for months.
Because you were very unlikely Leo.
Yeah.
But you got the beard.
Not me. Not me. I need heavy doses every day.
Well, if you're into astrology at all, I am a Leo that is a triple Taurus.
Oh, okay. You and I'll get along really great. That makes a lot more sense. I'm seeing the Taurus.
Yeah, it's everywhere. I am full of bullshit. Anyways, so
we
Lorrisa,
say bovine scatology in the PG realm.
What?
Bovine scatology.
I'm going to stick with mine. I just bumped us up to PG-13.
There you go.
Lorrisa, among being a fantastic writer and an actress and just head and shoulders above most people when it comes to intelligence, from what I've seen, you also have quite a bit of geek cred.
Yes, why don't you tell your listeners why?
You don't sound happy about this, but
no,
I was thrilled to find this out.
I don't like to brag about that stuff.
But I'm a friggin' nerd. I am a geek. I'm a video game geek. Yeah. So you've provided mocap for Mortal Kombat games, the Injustice games, and Harry Potter's Wizards United game, right?
That is correct. Ever since 2008, I've been doing that. And it's kind of become performance capture, especially for, say, Injustice franchise and Mortal Kombat, because they use our faces and our expressions now. And even though, this is something I've always put that out there, so I don't want to take credit for anything that I don't do directly. But there are 4 different actors or performers who contribute to every character, for example, in Mortal Kombat. So you have the model whose face they scan. to create the 3D model and to adjust it the way they wish to in the art department. You have the stunt person who does like a lot of the in-game moves and the stunts throughout the cinematics. You have the voiceover artist out in Burbank, California. And then there's me. So I provide the movement, the physical movement, the facial expressions for the cinematic chapters of the game.
Right, and you were you provided it for Sonya and Katana, correct? In the Mortal Kombat franchise.
Depends on the game.
That's
so
true.
In Mortal Kombat versus DC Universe, I worked on Sonya and Katana for, I think, it's varied, but I know for 10, I know I did, 9 was Sonya again, 10 was Sonya again. Aftermath, so this is number 11, I worked on Jade and Sindel. For Injustice, the first time, there was more, this is before we did facial capture, so each of us actors did more characters, and ever since facial capture came around, they brought in more actors, so the facial expressions are much more unique per character. So first Injustice, I was Harley Quinn, Hawkgirl, Raven, and there was another I can't remember right off the top of my head.
There's a lot.
But in this last one, Injustice 2, I contributed to Black Canary and Poison Ivy.
I think that's just cool. It was one of the things that I uncovered while I was doing research that I didn't expect. It literally came out of left field on me. Like,
it has totally changed my life, Chris. I am so grateful for it. It's been my loyalist client all these years. I absolutely love the work. The animators I work with are phenomenal, fantastic.
We've had them to the house, you know.
They're such good people. The privilege that I've had to do this all these years. I actually started taking Shotokan Karate 10 years ago because of Mortal Kombat. And it was that experience that directly influenced Mistress Maneater, the MMA aspect, the Serbian priests that fought in MMA, so on and so forth. So it has been a huge part of my brand. I mean, I always loved kick-ass women and those sort of roles. As a kid, I loved
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles?
No, I never watched Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
You never wanted to be the...
No, I always joked that when the boys wanted to play Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, I had no idea what it was. And they're like, you can be April. I'm like, I'm not good. No, she's a girl. Girls always, they're just damsels in distress who are useless. I want to be the rat. No, nothing about that.
April wasn't too much the damsel in distress. She was at times, but
I
she could hold her
own. This is when I was 6 years old, and I just knew girls were, pretty much useless for the most part. I wanted to be Linda Hamilton in Terminator 2.
There you go. Yeah.
So, fortunately, getting the honor to be able to be part of this for the last 14 years, I think that was a direct influence in me being Zenobia and loving playing these badass warrior women, because we don't often get that opportunity as actors.
All right. What 2 movies for each of you inspire you?
You start.
I have to start?
You start.
Okay. Well, Aliens, which I just absolutely love that movie, Aliens. And God, why only 2? Can't we add a 0?
No, because then we'd be here all night.
There's so many, but probably Jaws.
Okay.
Because that was Gonzo filmmaking that resulted in literally a seismic shift in the way movies are made.
Yeah. So
what about you, honey?
Well, I'll just have to say Zemeckis movies. So the ones I grew up with, Back to the Future, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and then as an adult, Contact and Forrest Gump. To me, that's just classic feel-good movie making that crosses genres and that it's just universally loved, that you can watch many times and always get something out of it. And that's what I want to bring to my writing.
Lorrisa is a movie watcher after my own heart. You too, though, CJ, because I like Aliens, but Back to the Future, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, all those are up there as my top tier. Like, if I'm sick, I'm going to put on a movie that I watched when I was a kid,
Yep.
Yeah.
So, okay. Binary Star Pictures. What is the goal of Binary Star Pictures? And this is going to be a multi-part question, so bear with me. Was it difficult to get funding for both the the movie in the studio, which you guys said you didn't have to worry about too much with the movie.
Well, there's a story that goes along with that. We flipped a house actually to make our movie.
Really?
Yeah, we did not seek outside investors. We have
did all the work ourselves.
Yeah, so
I have painted every surface in that house 4 times.
Yeah, but we had this idea, like, you know, when you're crowdfunding for a movie, who are you asking for money from? Other actors. Actors don't have any money.
And artists.
You know, they don't. I mean, you know, so, and then the other thing is, like, legitimate investors, they're gonna run the other way. You know, I mean, going and asking them for money for a first-time filmmaker, it's like Forrest Gump, run, Forrest, you know, run.
And also, what do most investors, you know, for those of your audience who, you know, want to do that, what is in it for those investors? I mean, most people aren't just looking for places to throw their money where they're not going to get anything out of it.
Yeah, so we decided early on that we would make a movie that was high quality, on time, on budget, and have a really good calling card, because then for our next movie, then we can go out and ask people, do you want to be a part of this? And because we've proven that we can make a movie. You know, a lot of independent movies, they never even finish.
Yeah.
And then other independent movies, they start, and the end result is something that's like an abomination of what the initial concept was. We didn't do any of those things. So, Binary Star Pictures, we just have the idea that we want to create the kind of films that people want to see, that they really are longing for, stories that inspire conversation, inspire thought, that there's, like with Maneater, it's solid entertainment on its own. You can watch it. I've always felt like if you watch a comedy and you get 3 or 4 or 5 good belly laughs out of it, you got your money's worth. Mm-hmm. So we provide that with our movie, but there's also deeper meanings. If you're looking for allegories or metaphors in a script, they're there if you want to look for them.
Which you don't always get with a comedy.
Yeah. So we want to, whether it's a Lorrisa script or any other script that we decide to produce that's worth it, it's got to have those elements. And we just want to leave the world a better place.
And the name is interesting. So CJ came up with that because, you know, we were like, couldn't agree on a name for our company. And he pulled that from my play Made of Stars, which you started our session together asking about, because in that is our only time I think we've really been on stage together that wasn't in something that wasn't an improv show. And we were a couple in the show, and in every act, the characters, the lovers, look up at the stars. And
in a binary stars revolve around each other, and that's us.
So my character remarked on what would we be? We would be binary stars.
That's sweet. There really is. Yeah. Well, my other question is like, do you guys plan on opening the doors up for other indie filmmakers, you know, to get started once you guys get a little further down the line? I mean,
we want to. I've always operated as a mentor. In my professional life outside of filmmaking, I'm a financial educator, and I traveled the country offering financial education to folks. So mentoring people and guiding them in the right direction, helping them make good decisions is always it's got kind of like in my blood. And we want to be able to do that. The unfortunate thing is that making movies takes a lot of money. And so our idea is that we want to make this movie as successful as possible so we can continue doing them, so we can attract the kind of money and funding and people who are passionate about what we're doing and open those doors. We want that. We live in Northwest Indiana. We're about an hour outside of downtown Chicago, and there's a thriving artistic community throughout this entire area. And we would love to be able to bring really passionate, qualified people under that umbrella when the time is right.
I know you guys are working hard to promote the Misadventures of Mistress Maneater. See, that flows right off my tongue. I've seen other people fumble it, and I'm like, how?
Nobody else can do it.
Yeah. I know you guys are doing the press tour and everything, you know, getting attention for it. But I got to ask, what comes next? After Mistress Maneater, what's next?
Well, what it seems to be for us is whenever we talk about it, it falls through, whatever it is.
Fair enough.
Right? Bad juju.
Yeah.
So I'm always working on another project, but it's open right now. It's been a little very challenging for most independent filmmakers.
COVID has been
COVID.
rough.
Oh yeah.
Because just getting a union talent on your set is far more difficult than it was at a low budget in the past. So we'll see what time.
Well, Larissa's working on a script for a film. We're working on a pitch for a TV show. I had been working real hard to acquire rights to a script from of a play, and it's like the military. It's all hurry up and wait. You know?
No, I understand.
So,
and like I said, when you said bad juju, I understand that completely. I don't really talk about my next moves often.
Right.
So I really hope everything works out for you guys. I really do, because like I said, and I've mentioned this a couple of times now, if the Misadventures of Mistress Maneater is your first foray into filmmaking for yourselves, I can't wait to see what comes next, because it is a solid first entry. I have seen a ton of first entries for filmmakers that haven't been even half as good as your movie is.
Well, thank you that's high praise. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, that's the end of the regular questions. Now it's time to play interview roulette.
Oh no! I'm glad I'm sitting.
Now, what we're going to do is we're going to go back and forth between the two the same way we kind of did for the interview. If there's a question that you really want to answer that the other person got, I will allow it. But ultimately, the numbers that you chose are your questions, and the numbers that CJ chose are his questions.
Okay.
So, CJ, we're going to let you go first.
Oh boy, here we go.
I'm a big believer in age before beauty. Speaking as a man who is 10 years older than his own wife, I can make those jokes. Okay.
I got you beat there. I'm 25 years older than mine.
Well, we're in good company. That's all I'm saying.
No one had any idea. Nobody.
Okay. The world is flooding. You must build a small ark. Which 7 animals would you save?
Well, first of all, it'd have to be cats. Love cats. God, I have to pick 7 animals? Cats.
Good luck. Good luck. Mongoose. How about a mongoose?
Yeah, because we don't want to have any snakes. So there'd be mongooses to take out the snakes. So we got to have mongooses. What's the most intelligent animal out there? Probably. I don't know.
A dolphin?
Dolphin. Yeah, dolphins for sure.
They don't need to be in an ark, though.
Yeah, they don't need to be in an ark.
I'd pick 7 different varieties of cats. I'd have a Maine Coon, Norwegian forest cat, ragdoll, Himalayans,
Turkish Angora.
Turkish Angora. That's it. Okay, and that's 7, right? Okay.
Yeah, sure. We'll go with that. Lorrisa, what is your kryptonite?
What is my kryptonite?
She's wrong.
You heard that one.
Admitting she's wrong.
He said admitting I'm wrong.
Well, that's his answer, not yours.
Admitting she's wrong.
Probably.
It's true.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I think I have plenty of kryptonite. It's just the trouble of picking which one. Being put on the spot by hosts.
Well, that's the point of the interview roulette questions, is to get you thinking a different way than what you're normally used to with interviews. Okay, CJ, which holiday do you think is just utter nonsense?
Sweetest Day.
Yeah, why?
Because it was developed to sell candy and cards.
So wasn't Valentine's Day?
Yeah, but at least Valentine's Day comes from,
a massacre?
Yeah, a massacre, So, I mean, there's something there, I mean, I read something about Valentine's Day today about how St. Valentine stabbed somebody in the neck. You would love that, honey.
I would love that.
Yeah. So
sounds like a lovely romantic evening, just getting stabbed in the neck.
We used to have this joke. Lorrisa has to have scripts where somebody gets stabbed in the neck. That's just the way it goes.
Lorrisa, if you gain superpowers, who is the first person that you'd tell other than your husband?
My mom. My mom.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah. And then my cat.
Yeah. In our house, cats are people. So
I have a cat and a dog, and they're about as close to children as I'm ever going to get.
Yeah,
that's true.
CJ, what was the most special handmade gift someone has ever given you?
Lorrisa, she makes these beautiful handmade artistic cards that she writes these lovely notes in. I used to, when I would travel for my job, she would leave me cards in my suitcase, and I would find these beautiful handmade cards, and it would just always bring a tear to my eye, you know.
I'm like a hopeless romantic or something.
Well, I guess it's a good thing you did a RomCom, huh?
Yeah, right?
Lorrisa, if animals could talk, which do you think would be the rudest? And you can't say cats.
No, my cats wouldn't be rude. They would ask me, they would be demanding a lot of food.
They want people food. Yeah.
They'd want food. Which ones would be the rudest? Our neighbor's dog?
Yeah, probably that pit bull next door. It would be the pit bull next door.
Fair enough. CJ, what is something you don't mind paying more money for?
Good food.
Any particular cuisine that you enjoy the most?
Sushi.
We spend money on sushi.
You did get sushi.
As you should.
Yes.
Sushi is life.
Yes.
Lorrisa, if someone assigned you a random job to start, what's the worst career they could pick for you?
Oh God. Hosting at the auto show? I don't know.
Anything that has to do with dealing with people on an ongoing
Yes.
basis, I'd say.
Yes. Or being bored out of my mind would be tough.
Or
Usually
being
the jobs that deal with people, they bore me out of my mind.
Yeah. I know. Call center. That would be tough.
I have done that job, and it is terrible.
Yes.
It's like chewing on a whole roll of aluminum foil for the whole day.
I usually don't last long because my urge to cuss out the people on the other end of the phone rises very quickly.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
I can see that.
Yeah. CJ, your last interview roulette question. If you had to design a playground for adults, what is one thing you'd make sure it had?
Keep it clean. Keep it clean.
I can't say sex swing.
That's any swing if you're doing it right. I'm just
That's true. That's true. One thing for an adult playground. Golly gee, that's what would it be? I there's nothing. Usually I'm really quick on the uptake with these, but I'm not coming up with anything. You have anything on it?
You know, I just think of the cool stuff at the Museum of Science and Industry that I so love. Some of the interactive stuff, like the Hall of Mirrors.
I think a Nickelodeon slime cannon.
that would be awesome. I think that'd be cool for a kid's playground too.
Yeah, I think it would be a slime cannon for sure. And there'd be definitely certain adults that want a slime.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Lorrisa, your last interview roulette question. Who would you want to play you in the movie about your life?
Who would I want to play? Ooh.
And since you're married, who would you want to play your husband?
Maybe Keira Knightley. She's my same age, and I've always admired her. I think she's a wonderful actress. Who would
Bone
play?
structure is the same too.
Yeah, she's awesome. And I don't know. Craig looked like a young Arnold.
I
back
looked
in
like
the
Arnold
80s.
Schwarzenegger when I was younger. Yeah.
But let's see now. Yeah, Ryan Reynolds is personality. He's a Scorpio too. I don't think that the age difference between them is right, but yeah, there we go.
Pee Wee Herman.
There we go. Pee Wee Herman.
I think that'd be Paul Rubens is what you're looking at over there. All right, guys, that's it. That's all I've got for you. I want to thank you for joining me. Tell them where they can find your movie.
So, The Misadventures of Mistress Maneater is on all the streaming platforms. You can find us on Tubi, Amazon Prime, Google Play, Apple TV, YouTube, and IMDb TV. If you go to Google and just type in Mistress Maneater, there's going to be reams of information about us to find us. If you like our movie, please leave us a rating and a review. That helps us with overcome the algorithms. And tell all your friends. We depend on word of mouth to get the word out about our work. So if you like our movie, tell all your friends to watch it. If you hate our movie, tell all your enemies to watch it.
Just tell people to watch it. That's all.
Yeah, that works. That works.
And don't watch it on Tubi. Actually pay for it.
Well, Tubi at least pays, as far as we know, pays more than Prime.
Tubi pays more than Prime, yeah. So Tubi you can watch with commercials.
Yeah, that's how I did it.
Yeah, and we actually get a cut of the commercial revenue, which is far more than what Prime pays.
Yeah,
cool.
But if you did enjoy it, because nowadays people really don't have to pay for movies, but what would mean a lot to us in lieu of paying for it would be share it on your social media. Say, I really like this, you should check it out.
Yep.
All right. Anything else you want to tell us before I let you go?
No, I thought it was a great interview, and we